Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here, welcome back to Gents Scents. Hope that you're doing well. Today, we're going over the 5 best and the 5 worst from Lattafa. So basically the creme de la creme and the crap de la crap. And I plan on doing this going forward with a bunch of different brands, both from design houses, clone houses, niche houses, just across the whole gamut there. And these rankings were determined actually, in part, by you, because these are the rankings as of this video on Fragrantica. And I'll let you know which ones I agree with and which ones maybe I don't agree with quite as much. So the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna start with the number 5 worst fragrance and then the number 5 best fragrance and work our way up to the number 1 worst and number 1 best. The number 1 worst is actually the worst, so it's not really a good thing to win, but these will be linked in the description. Feel free to check them out there. Let's get started. Number 5 worst Lattafa is Confidential Private Gold. I like gold. Oh, and one other caveat here. I tried to keep the fragrances to at least unisex or leaning masculine, since I know like 97% of you out there watching this are guys. This one's unisex, leaning a bit feminine, but decided to leave this one in, so forgive me for that. And this, as of this video, has a score of 3.98 out of 5, which is actually not really a bad score. It's a clone of Kirke by Tiziana Terenzi, which also smells similar to Herba Pura from Suspiro/Xerjoff. It's a very fruity fragrance, fruity, tropical, fresh, sweet. Some people might say overly sweet, bubblegummy, sugary sweet. I'm not a massive fan of this one myself, but the quality for the price is actually not too shabby. It just doesn't work that well for me personally. And I should say there are actually a couple of other fragrances that were below this one that I don't have. One of those I used to have, but I sold it years ago. And I do mean years ago, like I think before I even started this channel, I sold it. That one is Amir Al Oud at a 3.93, and that one's kind of similar to Black Afghano from Nasamato. And that one at one point in time was getting actually hyped a good amount. That's when I bought it. And actually I know for sure that was before I started the channel. I got it for a pretty good price. I feel like it was maybe 25 bucks or something like that. And there was a little bit of hype behind it, and so I sold it on for pretty much what I paid for it because I wasn't wearing it. So that one used to own, and it's ranked below this one. To my own personal taste, I actually like that one just a bit more than this one. Then there's also Ijazi, which is a little bit below this one. Comes in a gold bottle. There's also a silver edition of that fragrance, and that one was ranked 3.95 out of 5. So I want to let you know about those ones also, but I just, I don't have the bottle. So this one kind of, unfortunately, getting slotted into 5th place, even though it maybe doesn't deserve it, but it kind of does. Number 5, best Lattafa, Kamra Kawa. And I like this one. I like this one a lot. So smells similar to Kamra, obviously, only this one has a coffee note added in. And it's not a huge amount different than the original one. It really is just kind of along the edges where you pick that coffee up. I mean, it's definitely noticeable, don't get me wrong, but it's not like overpowering. To me, is it an improvement over the original? Kinda, yeah, I actually prefer smelling this one. I prefer wearing this one. And that's not to take away from the original, because that's a monster, right? Everybody knows that fragrance, super successful. But this one is really, really nice for the price point. Great spiciness, warmth, sweetness. The coffee adds a nice juxtaposition that makes the fragrance a little bit more interesting to smell. Good performance, just the whole deal, And then the original Kamra, that's gonna remind people of By Killian Angel Share or Gisa Sabah. So it's kind of in that style, not as woody as Angel Share, but nice sweetness to it all the way around, talking about the original Kamra. So number 5 is this one, Kamra Kawa, and that had a 4.49 out of 5. So yeah, really, really high ranking, and yet there are 4 higher. Kind of keep these separate, I guess. Before we head on to the next fragrance, guys, here's some codes you can use to save yourself some money. That JOMASHOP code has changed, so be aware of the new code. Only works in the JOMASHOP app, and then the Max Aroma code changed as well. The others remain the same. And if you're on TikTok, give me a follow there. Thank you. Number 4 worst Lattafa, Raghba. What? How are you gonna do my boy Raghba like that? You're doing it dirty. Don't appreciate that. This one has a 3.92, which, to be fair, is not that low, but still not great when you compare it to most all the other Lattafas out there, at least the ones that are on Fragrantica. This was the first Lattafa that I ever bought. And I've talked about this a few times. I guess we'll talk about it again really quickly. This was a hype beast. I know a lot of people nowadays, maybe who weren't like collecting fragrances or talking about them back when this was hot. It's so hot. They may not realize that. But this thing was like everywhere. People wanted this. At one point in time, this was like Lattafa's Kamra. Like, you know how when Kamra hit, everybody wanted it? That's how this was. Simpler times. So back when this one was really in demand, you basically had to buy Lattafa off eBay if you were in the US. And it was coming from overseas, so it would take a little while to get here, but the prices were still good. It's just none of the discounters at the time were really carrying Lattafa, again, in the US. So if you wanted it, that's what you had to do. And a lot of people wanted it. Now, to be fair, you know, smelling this fragrance now, put up against what's really popular, it makes sense why it's not rated as highly, especially if you're somebody who got into fragrances after the hype on this was gone, and then maybe you heard about it and you're like, oh, well, I'll scoop that up. I like Lattafa. You get this in and you go, what? It's not that it's like insanely challenging or anything like that, but is it more challenging than every single fragrance that's gonna be on this side of the table? Yeah, it is. It's similar to Scent Story 24 Gold, which also is a big hype beast. You had to be there, okay? But 24 Gold was heavily in demand. People figured out Raghba smells similar to 24 Gold. Raghba was heavily in demand. It's an oudi fragrance. If you spray on too much of it, some people think it smells like cat pee. So there is that, but a pleasant cat pee, is that a thing? It's ambery, a little bit sweet, but it has a tang to it. And unfortunately, finds itself on the wrong side of the best versus worst here. I don't agree with that. Is it because it brings me back, you know, 8, 9 years ago? Yeah. Number 4, which has a rating of 4.5 out of 5, is Vintage Radio. And Vintage Radio is some good stuff. It's a clone of Paragon by Initio, and it is sweet. It's very sweet, but it smells really good too. Strong fragrance, good performance, good quality. You can smell it right off the bat, no funkiness, no rubbing alcohol kind of vibe when you first spray it on. It has a fruity sweetness that's both a little bit sugary, then also deep as well. And they have more than one clone of Paragon. They also have Al Nashama, which is a clone of Paragon as well. But it was ranked or rated just a little bit below this one. I think that one was like 4.44, something like that. Or no, I think it was actually a little higher. I think it was like 4.47. So essentially just barely below this one. Honestly, you can't go wrong with either of those. So if you want a clone of that fragrance, you could check out either one. They're both about as good. Woody, fruity, sweet. Top 3 now, worst fragrances. Number 3, which has a rating of 3.83, Musamam, which this one has a really interesting presentation. You can tell that they put a little effort into it. It has this snake that wraps around the cap, some snake skin looking vibe going on top of the cap, and has a decent heft to it as well. So this isn't one of those ones where they just basically puked something out and put like no effort into it, right? I'm just playing. All I'm saying is take a look at this stock bottle and then take a look at this. Which one do you think they put more into? That's all I'm saying. Do not say this. That's the wrong answer. This one, when it was launched, was basically presented as like an M7 twist. Yves Saint Laurent M7, right here. So that's how it was announced, or at least that's how I saw it, because I went to some of the stores that I usually shop from and they had that one. And it was like, M7 twist. I think it said that on Fragrance Buy. Maybe another store or two said that as well. And it just does not compare with M7. Okay, it just doesn't. When I first got this in, I was like, yeah, maybe it's kind of got that M7 vibe in there. It's not the exact same, you know, twist, right? When you go back and forth, it just ain't it. The spiciness, the woodiness in M7, richer, more defined, more interesting. What this actually smells like is bits of M7 mixed with Gucci Guilty Absolute, specifically that leather that you find in Guilty Absolute. And honestly, across a bunch of different fragrances, they have a similar leather aspect to them. Same perfumer, typically. But that's kind of how this smells. And at the end of the day, that's just not going to be appealing to a lot of people for multiple reasons, right? If you're wanting something that smells like M7, then you get this and it doesn't really smell that close to M7, that's a letdown, right? So some people are going to say, oh, I don't like that. And then also, if it's got that kind of leather vibe from Guilty Absolute or fragrances like that, you know, that didn't do so hot. That fragrance didn't do very well when it was launched, got discontinued. Yeah, it's just not super appealing to a lot of people. And so you put that together and you see the rating. Now, I don't hate this fragrance actually, but I also really love M7 and I don't mind Gucci Guilty Absolute. I think that's a pretty interesting fragrance. So I don't hate how this comes across, but I do completely understand the rating. Number 3, best with a 4.53, really good, Jasoor. Jasoor is a clone of Coral Fantasy, Valentino Uomo Born in Roma Coral Fantasy. And this is actually a really, really good one. And the more that I smell this one, the more I like it. So it makes sense that it would be ranked so highly because Coral Fantasy is a fragrance that's in high demand. People really like that one, it sells very well. So having a cheaper alternative that smells close to that, people are gonna enjoy that. It's got great versatility, good usability, compliment factor. You know what most people are looking for in fragrances, or specifically Lattafas a lot of the time. Cheaper versions of a nice wearing fragrance, basically. Get that fruity sweetness off the top, really attention grabbing as soon as you spray this one on. Like I said, the more I spray that one, the more I like it, the more I smell it. And this is one of those ones where the magical M word, maceration, that's what you were thinking, right? Maceration, yeah. Good. No minds and gutters here. This is one of those ones where the magical M word actually does seem to have an effect, or at least it did for me. Where the first couple times I sprayed it, I was like, yeah, it's good, it's good. I don't know if it's amazing, but it's good. And then as time has gone on, it just smells much more robust. So number 3, Jasoor. Back to the bad ones. Number 2 with a 3.78, Assad Zanzibar. Zanzibar, ooh. That's not a very good rating. This one, yeah. So when it was first announced, people were pretty hype because the original Assad is very popular. That's a clone of Sauvage Elixir. And this is one of those ones where they were taking pre-orders for it, right? And the price for the pre-order on this one was pretty high. If I recall correctly, it was like 70, 80 bucks, somewhere around there. Pretty expensive for a clone fragrance. And then it launched and people weren't quite sure what to make of it. So for some people, there's just something in this fragrance that doesn't work well for them. It just smells funky off their skin and they don't like it. And for me, there are parts of this fragrance that I do like, and then there are parts that I don't like as much. Would I put it as like one of the absolute worst things Lattafa has ever done? I don't think I'd go that far, but for a lot of people, this was a letdown. And initially, the thought was, you know, this is gonna be Le Beau Le Parfum, something like that, which would make sense, right? Because Sauvage Elixir is really popular, but it's expensive. And so Assad being a clone of that, that makes sense. And then you're coming out with Zanzibar, it would make sense to clone a popular designer fragrance that maybe people can't scoop up for a good price very often. And when this was launched, that was Le Beau Le Parfum. And you look at the note breakdown, kind of similar. But this actually is kind of like doing its own thing. You could say it's like in the wheelhouse of Le Beau Le Parfum, but it's not a one-to-one. Still, number two worst. Number 2 best also has a 4.53, just like Jasoor, and it's Al Nashama Caprice. And this one is a clone of La Nuit de l'Homme Blue Electrique. I really liked Blue Electrique. I know some people did not. Some people thought it was, like boring or whatever. To me, it was taking the La Nuit de l'Homme DNA, that style of fragrance, but then making it more wearable for year-round use, more versatile. Basically what the name entails, you know, turning it into kind of a blue fragrance. La Nuit de l'Homme if it were a blue fragrance. And I like that. Unfortunately, in the US, essentially Blue Electrique hit, and within like 3 months, couldn't find it anymore. And the thought process was, you know, there's no way that they launched it and then it just disappears. Like that's not gonna happen, and yet that's what happened. And it would be different if it were one of those deals like the one Luminous Night, right? Where it's an exclusive edition and it's not actually launched in the US, but it pops up at discounters and then it's really hard to find. It'd be different, but that's not what happened. They launched it. You could buy it off YSL's own website. You could buy it off Macy's. And then after 3 months, it was like, goodbye. And that left a lot of people wanting that fragrance who didn't have a chance to scoop it up, or who wanted a backup bottle, but they didn't scoop it up, and now the only place you can find it is eBay. Enter this. And I think it does a really good job at capturing Blue Electrique. Is it a dead-on one-to-one? No, but for the price point, it gets the job done, and it smells really close. And the presentation is pretty good on this one too. So this one I like a lot. Would I say number 2 best ever? I don't know about that, but I do think it's extremely well done. Number 1 worst, and this one was worst by a wide margin. Got a 3.32. Apologies for the upcoming butchering of the name. Lail Maliki. Yeah, this one just didn't do so hot. It's a little bit similar to Histoire de Parfum 1804. And this is one that I actually purchased blind. I bought it from JOMASHOP, and I was just looking through and basically adding in like Lattafas I didn't own. I was like, I'll buy that one, buy that one, buy that one, buy that one. And this is one of the ones I tossed in there. I don't like it. I know some people are gonna enjoy this. Some people out there are gonna love this. And if you do love this, more power to you. I'm not yucking your yum. It's just, it doesn't work that well for me. It has almost an animalic white floral aspect to the fragrance. So very indolic. It can sting the nose hairs a little bit when you smell it. There is like an underlying interesting facet to it where, again, if you like it, I can totally get where you're coming from, because there are parts of this fragrance that when you smell it, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. Like this lingering kind of like powdery sweetness that's underneath those white florals when you smell it, but it can just be really aggressive, off-putting. And for most people out there, they're not gonna find this very easily worn. Also, I kind of hate the presentation. It's got like the cheesy, like Club de Nuit-esque kind of cap going on, and the bottle looks a little cheap. None of that would matter if it smelled amazing, but to me, it does not. And for the Lattafa fragrances that I own, which I don't own all of them, obviously, I could buy 25 probably for the next 30 days and still not own all of them. That's an exaggeration, but you know what I'm saying. This would be one of my least favorite, if not my least. So it makes sense. Number 1 is kind of a surprise. It's got a 4.59 out of 5, which is pretty good. It's not like it's in first place by 0.01. That's a full 0.06 points ahead of the next one. Ishq Al Shuyuk Silver. Yeah, 4.59 as of this video. So this one is a clone of 1 Million Lucky, and it's actually extremely good. You already know the score. Very close, good price on this one, nice performance. There are some quirks with my bottle that are a little bit annoying, like the atomizer collar. It pops off every time that I take the cap off. It gets stuck inside here. I hate it, so yay. That's fun. I don't really need that anyway. But the fragrance, really good. Thankfully, 1 Million Lucky is still easily found in the US. So, you know, you don't have to like rush out and try to scoop that up right away like it's going away tomorrow or anything. You can still find it. I think that fragrance, 1 Million Lucky, has had more rumblings of being discontinued than anything in the past like 5 years. Seems like every other month it's like, it's discontinued. Oh, whew, it's still there. It's discontinued. Oh, it's still there. Whew. But it is one of those things you wonder if there's so much smoke, eventually there would be fire. Hopefully not. It still sells really well. But yeah, 1 Million Lucky, fantastic scent for basically year round. You can use it whenever you want. Nice sweetness and freshness, and then it gets a little bit deeper as it dries down. And this is an exceptional alternative to that fragrance. Would I say the best thing they've ever done? I don't know, but I do think it's extremely good. So I'm not gonna argue it. There we go, guys. That, according to Fragrantica as of now, with a couple caveats, are the bottom 5 And top 5, Lattafa fragrances. So let me know what you think about that. Let me know which ones you would swap out, you know, which ones you would put down here that aren't, which ones you would put up here that aren't. There are some big ones missing, obviously, from this side, but maybe this side as well. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.